So I think we're just going to get John McMullen on here audio wise. And when it, you can see in the 65. Hey, John, thanks for taking a couple minutes with us. I really appreciate it.
No problem. How are you, Dan?
Oh, good. Hey, I was going to start it off with the Devin White move, John, but let's go to the Kenny Pickett. Your takeaway first initially when you saw the move and the trade that was made to bring Kenny Pickett into the Eagles organization.
Yeah, the Eagles liked him a lot coming out of college, and Howie Roseman did a lot of homework, even went to watch him personally, and obviously it was a situation where he ultimately ended up being a first rounder, so he was never got to play seriously for the Eagles, but they've always liked him as a player, and we know this team probably values the backup quarterback spot more than any other in the NFL with their recent history. But things have to change a little bit from a financial perspective because of Jalen Hurts' extension. So to get a quarterback on his rookie deal over the next 2 years at least, it's really cost effective. A little bit under $2 million. I think it spikes to about 2.5. So if you look at what backup quarterbacks are getting, they paid Marcus Mariota $5 million. He got a raise to $6 million to go to Washington. So they're getting a little bit of a deal, and they get a guy they like. And if the worst happens to Jalen Hurts, which you never hope for any player, but I think they believe that the season wouldn't be over if they had to pull the ripcord and go to Kenny Pickett.
John, let me throw this at you here. And look, he struggled in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh struggled. They've had 25 touchdown passes, John, the last 2 years. I mean, I think that tells you all you need to know on the offense, and that's why Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator, was replaced. Pickett replaced himself. So I go here. Quarterback Jalen Hurts struggles last year, especially down the stretch. The coach is on a hot seat. And I'm not suggesting in any way he's being brought in to pressure Jalen Hurts, but boy, I'll tell you what, that puts a little bit more gasoline on the environment. You know what I'm saying? If I'm a player being in the locker room, an NFL locker room like I was, if somebody told me, okay, well, he's not being brought in to take your job, but I had a bad year the previous year, I don't know, man. I mean, it wouldn't bug me, but I would think about why are they doing this? Does that make sense?
A little bit. Look, I think that's what happened with Carson Wentz when they drafted Jalen Hurts, but I do think the mentality of the players a little bit different here with Jalen Hurts. I don't think it's going to affect him nearly as much anytime you bring in somebody with a pedigree of a first-round pick. But as you mentioned, I think it's, the Eagles aren't certainly considering it as pushing Jalen Hurts. I mean, I wouldn't agree with the assessment that he had a bad season last year. He certainly took a step back for the first time from where he was the year prior, runner-up for the MVP. But that's a pretty high level. I think he's still, if you look at the league as a whole, he was still a borderline top 10 quarterback. So I don't think there's any concern from any avenue that Kenny Pickett is here to push or Jalen Hurts is going to view it that way. I think maybe that's some leftover angst from Eagles fans who saw how Carson Wentz reacted, and it's a completely different personality. You saw what Jalen went through in college, and it didn't affect him, and I don't think this is going to affect him at all.
John, the Devin White line.
Plus, he's got a $255 million contract to lean on.
Yeah, but then again, hey, Wentz had a deal too.
Yeah, he did, and even that tells you how quickly things move in the NFL. He once had the record for dead money, and we all were like, how are the Eagles going to take on that dead money? And Denver took on, I don't know, $85 million for Russell Wilson. So that's how quickly it explodes. His deal is much bigger than Carson's. Yeah, it's just not the same thing. I get why some Eagles fans will go down that route, but it's just a different guy, different personality, different circumstance.
John, this Devin White sign doesn't make sense to me. And I kind of tuned you on a little bit this morning, and I heard your take. If you could expand on it again, I mean, geez, man. I mean, Zach Cunningham and Nicholas Morrow had higher ratings and grades.
Way higher. Way
When,
higher.
when,
Not only higher, way higher. I mean, Devin White was one of the worst linebackers in football last year, and he got benched. Um, even amongst NFL decision makers, pedigree's a real thing, and they have a hard time putting it in the rearview mirror. And the fact that this guy was the number 5 overall pick at one time, he's getting chance after chance after chance. He's proved to be an undisciplined player. He's been one of the worst linebackers in the NFL when it comes to run support. And think about that when I say that. Who's in front of him? In
Vita Vea.
I mean, he should have one of the easiest jobs when it comes to run support in the NFL. And he's still bad at it. And you see Levante David, who plays next to him, is really good at it. He's very athletic. He had that run in the playoffs, which I think it's one of the biggest anomalies because he truly looked like the number 5 overall pick in a 3-game run to the Super Bowl. And he never looked like it again before or after. I see Eagles fans who haven't watched him play, and I encourage to watch him play. Anybody who has $99 of disposable income, go get NFL, whatever they call it now, Plus or Game Pass. It's all there. We're not making it up. He made that Pro Bowl team because he had 9 sacks. So the one thing he can do is go straight ahead and rush the passer because he's a tremendous athlete. Well, Vic Fangio doesn't blitz quarterbacks. That's not his scheme. So this is one where I believe the Eagles were in on a number of linebackers, weren't able to get them. And it's starting to get late in the process and things are getting picked apart. And remember, when the draft is coming up, you always want to draft-proof your roster. So you always want to have a guy in place so you don't have to feel, oh, it's the 5th round. I have to take a linebacker here. To me, this is how he draft-proofing his roster. This doesn't prevent them from adding somebody else, whether it's in the draft. And you better hope they add somebody else. That's all I'll say. Try to be nice.
John, I know that you're swamped for time, so a couple more questions here to you. I look at this Josh Sweat restructuring. People are like, well, and I said it earlier, well, he's staying. And then I thought about it. Kind of looks a little bit more inviting for a team to make a call now, doesn't it? That they've restructured a contract for him, that potentially a team could come in and they could still move the player. Or do you think that he's here to stay and that Reddick is now out?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this whole situation has been kind of crazy. I do know there's no way they're keeping 3 $10 million edge rushers. And in the case of Reddick with a rework deal, it's probably going to be 20 at the bare minimum. You have Huff at 17, and now you have Josh with the rework deal. I find it very hard. And they want it, by the way, Brandon Graham's still here, and they want to get Nolan Smith involved. So, there's too many chairs, too many bodies for the chairs when the music is going to stop. So somebody's leaving. They gave them guaranteed money, so they'd be on the hook for it. So I believe this is an indication that Josh is going to stay, and probably Haas is going to be out the door. Could they keep 3 $10 million plus edge rushers? I guess anything's possible, but boy, it would be shocking to me, even though they value the position.
Final question for you, John. Eagles free agent, when you look at everything here on defense, and if they move if they move Reddick, to me, the Bryce Huff deal looks like a lateral move where you just move the money over to him that you were paying Reddick. The Gardner Johnson, I think you and I are in agreement. He's a ball hawk. He's out of position sometimes, not the best run fit, but he's a game-changing, playmaking guy. I like the deal. And then you look at Devin White and you go, okay, you got another guy on the team that can't stop the run. I mean, so to me, I look at the defense, and I just had Angelo on with me, and I'm like, I don't see where they improved.
Well, I think the hope with Huff is that, to me, that's obviously a projection, and the fact that you're saying that you think he's an ascending player, and essentially you're going to get him at similar money that what you had Hassan Reddick for, but he's younger and the shelf life is going to be longer. So you're trying to flip that over, and maybe their thought process on Reddick is he's going to be 30. Better to give up on a player a year early than a year late. And they're trying to flip it over from that standpoint. So everything's always about projection. If they get Bryce Huff right, and man, there were a lot of teams in on Bryce Huff. Everybody was trying to get him in the NFC East, it seemed. The Giants were trying to get him. Washington was trying to get him. The Jets were trying to get him back. The Vikings were trying to get him. A lot of people think this kid is going to be a big-time pass rusher, and the Eagles were able to get him. So if they're right, I think it's going to look pretty good. But, on the surface, you've already seen the production of Hassan Reddick. But I will say those pressure percentages are more indicative than sacks of consistency of how you're pressuring the quarterback. And he was at 22%, which is pretty stinking impressive.
John, let me sneak one last one in here when it comes to the money or the position that's been addressed with the money. What have you been more surprised at? The fact that they spent money at linebacker on a risky player, and also risky with Barkley's injury history over the last 4 years, the money that's being thrown around, or the fact that they addressed those positions?
Oh, the money at running back. When the real numbers come out, remember the original numbers are agent driven. When the White contract numbers come out, I almost guarantee most of that is going to be incentives. He can earn up to $7.5 million. So I don't even think they spent significant money on him. With Barkley, obviously, they spent significant money, significant guaranteed money, and they seem to believe this guy is a generational player. And I don't know. I haven't seen it. Now, he didn't have the greatest supporting cast. I heard you say it's not his fault. What is he, 0-10 against the Giants?
0-10 versus the
0-10
Giants.
against the Cowboys.
Cowboys.
I think he's 25, 48-1 when he plays. I mean, the Giants just stink that majority of the. So it was about way more than Saquon Barkley. But I do know true generational players, and I got to cover Adrian Peterson up close, who was the MVP of this league with Christian Ponder as his quarterback. Guys who are that good, find a way. And I didn't see Saquon Barkley finding a way.
Absolutely. When the wife is more famous and you're Christian Ponder and your wife's more famous than you got a problem at quarterback, right, John?
Well, anybody saw Christian play knows that Daniel Jones might as well be Phil Simms compared to Christian Ponder.
Well, I'm going to kick him to the curb anyway because he's a Florida State guy. But anyway, hey, John, thank you so much. I appreciate it, my friend. Don't forget to catch John on Birds 365. Thank you, John.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
You got it. John McMullen. Yeah, she wears Christian Louboutin shoes. That's what she tells everybody. So it's all good. Absolutely. When we come back, baby, we got to light the fire on. Oh, baby. Look at this roster, man. That defense. Defense. Say it with me. Gangrene. 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 How about gag green? That's what we're going to start calling your Eagle defense. You didn't get better. You're not better on defense. You think you're better. Hit the like button. Keep it here, National Football Show.